Welcome to Get Connected with Nina Del Rio, a weekly conversation about fitness, health, and happenings in our community on 106.7 LITE FM.
Good morning and thanks for joining us on Get Connected. While the presidential candidates are vying for the most important job in the world, our guest has ideas on how we can mine their campaign strategies to campaign for the job we want. Whether you're pursuing employment opportunities inside or outside of your current job, she'll talk about how to fine-tune your negotiating skills, focus on your personal brand, and explore your options. Dr. Tracey Wilen has written an article on careers for LinkedIn called Be a Candidate, and she's here to discuss it today on Get Connected. Thanks for joining us again, Dr. Wilen.
Thank you for having me.
Her website is TraceyWilen.com, TraceyWilen.com. She's been a scholar at Stanford University, has held leadership positions at Apple, HP, Cisco, and the Apollo Group. And let's get right to it. The job market in the U.S. has turned a corner, and thankfully, in more sectors, employers are now facing sort of a different dynamic than they had in the recession. So I wonder if you could start with what's a candidate's market versus what's an employer's market, and where are those sectors where it's most likely to be true right now?
Sure. So according to Career Builder, their 2015 report, they found that hiring managers and employers are much more optimistic about this year. Then that would mean a shift from an employer's market to a candidate's market, which means that there are more candidates in demand and less jobs available, which puts the employer in a position where they need to start pursuing candidates, and it puts the candidates in a position where they might have more job options and opportunities than they have in the past. And that's very exciting because that means the pipeline's opening up.
It kind of helps dictate that it might be time to leave where you're working and springboard to something new if that's what you want to do.
Right. So I think, as soon as we see that the job marketing is starting to open up, that means whether I'm inside a company, I might have more opportunities, or outside the company, I might want to start exploring and looking because the times are changing.
So your article in LinkedIn, Dr. Wilen, Be a Candidate, is for opportunities both in your current workplace or if you want to move somewhere else. And you say perhaps the most obvious parallels between our careers and what the current presidential candidates are doing is to make yourself visible.
Yes, and I think, these debates this year are fascinating to watch, and I encourage people to look at it, but look at it from a learning point of view. What can I learn about branding? What can I learn about marketing myself? What can I learn about tips that I can use in job hunting? And the reason is we have a historic number of candidates running for the biggest job in the United States, the presidency. And so they actually have to make a little noise. They have to separate themselves from other people. And let me tell you, they're investing a lot in having communication strategists help them brand or rebrand themselves. And we can learn from that because this is just like us going out and pursuing jobs in the job market.
And for those people who want to pivot into a career where they haven't really been before, perhaps, we need to rebrand ourselves. Can you talk about the candidates that are doing that and the ways they're doing it?
Yes, in the first debate series that we saw, I'll just give you three examples. Carly Fiorina has rebranded herself from a high-tech CEO to a presidential candidate, and her brand, by the way, is The Outsider. That's also used by Ben Carson, who is rebranding himself from a neurosurgeon, if you can imagine, to a presidential candidate. And the third one that comes to mind, of course, is Donald Trump, who has actually rebranded himself a few times, from real estate to entertainment and now to presidential candidate. All of them are holding that brand of outsider, but if you look at that, they're actually doing a big rebrand from a past job and position to a new job, and a lot of us have to do that every single day when we're trying to pursue new careers.
When we're trying to pursue a new career, though, being an outsider, is that something or when can that be helpful when we're trying to pivot to a new job path?
Sure. So actually, companies really do want to hire people who have fresh ideas. It's a very competitive market. So if I can show you that I understand your business and can bring in fresh ideas, that's very appealing to me. So having that outsider approach can be very useful for you. And also, though, you can take your experiences. This is what I encourage people to do. Take your experiences and skills and package them in such a way that it makes it obvious to the person you're interviewing with that you are the right person for this job. You'll notice that these candidates all talk about themselves already in the presidential position and what they'll do for the United States. Just like that, you need to already assume the persona of the job that you're pursuing and parallel your experience and skills to that job.
Well, what you're trying to do is tell the employer that you are a better fit for the industry than someone who's actually been in that industry for a long time. That seems like a really hard sell to me.
Actually, if you have the skills and experience, the one that just comes to mind is that, Apple Computer is always hiring people from outside industry, someone in the fashion industry to help them revamp their stores. They're looking for people who have the experience and the skills. That's important of the job, but also proven results that you can bring to that company on day one.
Another candidate parallel, they're asked about past firings in Carly Fiorina's case. They're asked about gaps in their employment sometimes, or gaps in maybe they've been out of office for a while, as in Jeb Bush's case, just like we would be about all these different questions that come up when someone looks at our resume. How do we respond to those kinds of things?
Yeah, so you'll notice in the debates that there's a number of different kinds of strategies that are used to explain either gaps in the employment or issues that have come up during employment. And we can learn from these. One thing is to recognize it, but then shift the attention into a different direction, which is, yes, I hear you, but here are the things that I did, to be able to position myself, differently. Here's what happened. Another strategy I'm seeing is people are just saying, no, actually that's not true, and that's with false statements, and they're having very factual data points, metrics, to be able to help them prove that some of the things that people think about them are incorrect. Because you have to remember, in personal branding today, you need to take control of your brand and how you want to be known to the outside world before they start to define it for you. And I think these candidates, some of them are quite good at overcoming some of these definitions that people are pushing at them and creating a strong brand.
We're speaking with Dr. Tracey Wilen. She's authored 11 books. Her newest is Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends. She's written an article on careers for LinkedIn called Be a Candidate, and she's discussing it with us today on Get Connected on 106.7 LITE FM. I'm Nina Del Rio. And as we watch the candidates debate, they always have these playbooks depending on who they're speaking to and who they're debating. How do we deal with challenges from our potential competition, even if we don't know who they are?
Yes, so it's research. It's all about preparation and research. And you'll notice that a playbook, which is a strategy with a series of tactics, is pretty important. Every debate, the candidates will rethink through, rehash what happened, what went well, what didn't go well, and come up with a playbook. And we need to learn from this, because every time you have an interview or job opportunities, sometimes we forget and we use the same thing over and over again as if every job that we're pursuing is the same. And instead, what I encourage people to do is do your homework. Research the firm, go to their website, research the people, go to LinkedIn, find out more about them so that you can position your own personal playbook for that meeting. And I will emphasize it is important, because your job, your career is very important, and you want to make sure that you make the right choices and you get what you're worth.
Well, the political candidates, they have pollsters and teams, too, to give them feedback to kind of, and us, the public, to kind of tell them how things are going. If no one's outright telling you why you haven't gotten a job or why you didn't get a promotion, how do you know if you're on the right track?
Yeah, so you have to check in. And I know that in the job market, there's big black holes. Unfortunately, we don't get polls and ratings on our performance, which is too bad, because I know a lot of candidates would love to have that after a job interview. And so we need to, one is check in with the employer, and the protocol is around, if you haven't heard from them, and you always leave an interview saying, I felt that this interview went well. What are the next steps if we were moved ahead? When do you recommend that I check back in? And if the employer gives you a date, then you check in at that date. If you don't hear from an employer in around 10 to 14 days, then I would encourage you to reach out to them and just follow up and reemphasize what you can bring to the company and check in again. Now, if you're not working with a recruiter and there isn't an HR interface and you still don't hear from the hiring manager, then, you also have to have many stakes in play. What other jobs are you pursuing? Because let's face it, they're not always going to all come through. You also don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know if the budget has changed. You don't know if the job is closed. You don't know if an internal candidate has stepped up. So you have to respect the fact that you are not the only candidate for most of these jobs that you might be applying for, and there might be a number of other candidates in the pool as well.
Can you talk about, too, Dr. Wilen, what's so important and what do we need to include in our elevator pitch?
An elevator pitch, and this is, you'll notice in a lot of the debates, the first round is an elevator pitch by each candidate. It is a 30-second summary of what makes you unique and different from the other candidates and what you bring to the table, so to speak, to the country or to the job. An elevator pitch is very important. Every candidate for a job interview should have one, and I believe everyone should have an elevator pitch and multiple elevator pitch, one to describe who you are, what you do. Because let's face it, the way the elevator pitch works is, imagine you walk into an elevator and someone very significant who can change your life walks in with you, but you're only going up 5 floors and that's 30 seconds. What would you do? Would you look at the buttons? Would you look at the floor? Or would you look squarely at that person and leave them with a memorable statement so that they hold that door open and want to come back in and talk to you more? That's what an elevator pitch is.
So negotiating tactics, this is something that I think a lot of women are uncomfortable doing, asking for what they're worth. What are your top tips for salary and benefits negotiations?
Right, and particularly for women, you should know that it should be a dialogue. It's not a negotiation, and it's a skill that everyone can learn. But number one is you absolutely have to know your worth, and you can do that very easily today. You can go out to websites like payscale.com, Vault.com, Glassdoor.com. There are many recruiting salary surveys out there, and then you can also look at many of the professional association reviews. So it's very easy today to actually understand your worth. You have to be very practical about it, what's your experience, what's your skills, and you can find out actually down to the company and the zip code. Once you understand what you're worth, then at least you can have a comfortable dialogue with them. The other thing about salary negotiations is having a list of alternatives items that are very valuable to you. Because let's face it, you could get a higher salary and then kick yourself into a different tax bracket and actually make less money. So I encourage people to think about, is it extra time off? Is it flex time? Is it covering transportation costs? Is it a health club membership? Is it a car or a sign-on bonus? Think of other things that are easier if the company can't give you salary that have worth to you. I mean, stock options are a big one. Tuition reimbursement is another one. These are high dollar items that can actually make up and exceed the difference in the salary.
We actually had a guest on recently who believes that women put so much effort on being overprepared for a job that opportunities can pass us by. It's that whole issue of women staying in college forever, for instance. Her advice for women was to not overthink it. Just fake it before you make it. Just jump in where a man might naturally do that.
So my opinion on that is, one is everyone should prepare. You can never be too prepared. I mean, I actually think that Carly Fiorina, for example, just did a flawless job in preparation, and it shows. I mean, I think people can see when someone is very well prepared for something. But in terms of women, it's all about confidence. And a lot of women are not feeling that they can confidently assert themselves because perhaps of preparation or something else, where a male may feel like they have enough to move on it. So I would encourage women to be more confident and assertive. And it might be before they think they're ready for it, but it's definitely worth taking a calculated risk. And I think a lot of women can understand the word calculated risk, but risk is very important. And you need that time to be able to assert yourself and raise your hand for some things that, you may need to grow into that opportunity.
Dr. Tracey Wilen has written this article on careers for LinkedIn called Be a Candidate. You can find it online. You can also find her website at traceywilen.com, TraceyWilen.com. Dr. Wilen, thanks for joining us again on Get Connected.
Thank you very much.
This has been Get Connected with Nina Del Rio on 106.7 LITE FM. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the station. If you missed any part of our show or want to share it, visit our website for downloads and podcasts at 1067litefm.com. Thanks for listening.